He said, "You don't make fun of me."
I think that is very, very bad for that man to make an accusation like that.
I only feared him. That's what Tommy Lasorda once said about one of his all-time favorite players. But fear wasn't the right word. It was respect. Deep respect. The kind that only comes when you see someone do something you never thought possible. Tommy Lasorda was more than a baseball manager. He was the heart of the Los Angeles Dodgers for nearly 7 decades. He managed the team from 1976 to 1996. He won 2 World Series championships. He made it to the Hall of Fame. But more than that, he loved his players like family. He didn't just coach them. He believed in them. He fought for them. He built bonds that lasted forever. When Lasorda passed away in January 2021, just months after the Dodgers won another World Series, the baseball world lost a legend, but his legacy lives on in the players he loved most. Today we're going to talk about 5 of them. 5 players who meant something special to Tommy Lasorda. 5 players who showed what loyalty, trust, and belief can create. This isn't a story about stats. It's a story about relationships. Before we dive into these 5 special players, we need to understand what made Tommy Lasorda different. He wasn't a manager who sat in his office studying numbers. He wasn't the type to keep his distance from his players. Lasorda was loud. He was emotional. He was passionate. He famously said, "I bleed Dodger blue, and when I die, I'm going to the big Dodger in the sky." That wasn't just a catchy phrase. It was a profound personal mission statement that he lived out every day. Lasorda's approach to managing was built on relationships. He cooked Italian food for his players. He gave fiery speeches in the clubhouse that could make grown men cry. He believed that if you loved your players, if you showed them you cared, they would run through walls for you. And he was right. His teams played with a passion and intensity that reflected their manager's personality. They weren't just playing for wins and losses. They were playing for Tommy. They were playing for each other. They were playing for the family he built. But here's what made Lasorda truly special. He didn't wait until players made it to the big leagues to start building those relationships. He started in the minor leagues. As a manager for teams like the Ogden Dodgers, Spokane Indians, and Albuquerque Dukes, Lasorda won multiple championships. But more importantly, he formed bonds with young players that would last a lifetime. When those players eventually made it to the majors and Lasorda became their big league manager, they already knew him. They already trusted him. This was Lasorda's secret weapon. Players like Ron C. and Steve Yeager didn't meet Lasorda as their big league boss. They met him as their passionate, demanding, deeply invested minor league mentor. When Lasorda took over for the legendary Walter Alston in 1976, his boisterous style might have seemed jarring to outsiders. But to his core players, it was just Tommy being Tommy. This shared history was the bedrock of the trust he would later command. Lasorda's philosophy was simple but powerful. He was what people called a fiery motivator, a total rah-rah guy. His boundless energy and infectious enthusiasm could seemingly will his teams to victory. His managerial toolkit wasn't filled with complex algorithms or advanced statistics. It was filled with passionate clubhouse speeches, with love for Italian food that he often cooked for his players, with an unshakable, optimistic belief in the men who wore the Dodger uniform. Fernando Valenzuela was 20 years old when Tommy Lasorda made the biggest gamble of his career. It was opening day 1981. The scheduled starter, veteran pitcher Jerry Roos, pulled his calf muscle right before the game. Most managers would have gone with another veteran, someone safe, someone tested. But Lasorda didn't do that. He walked into the clubhouse and woke up Fernando from his pregame nap. He told him he was starting against the Houston Astros, in front of thousands of fans, on the biggest day of the year. Fernando had never started a major league game before. It was an audacious gamble, entrusting the first game of the season to a player who had never started a major league game. But Lasorda believed in him, not because of numbers, not because of scouting reports. He believed because he saw something special. For Lasorda, it was a simple act of belief in a player he saw as special. His confidence was the catalyst that allowed the incredible to happen. Fernando threw a complete game shutout that day. 5 hits, 2-0, the Dodgers won, and Fernando Mania was born. What came next was one of the most amazing stretches in baseball history. Fernando started the season 8 wins and 0 losses, 7 complete games, 5 shutouts. His earned run average was just 0.50. Stadiums sold out wherever he pitched. 11 of his 12 starts at Dodger Stadium in 1981 were packed. The number of Spanish-language radio stations carrying Dodgers games exploded overnight. Fernando became more than a baseball player. He became a cultural icon. Fernando was unlike any pitcher baseball had seen before. He was short and stocky, not the tall and lanky prototype teams usually looked for. His delivery was mesmerizing. At the peak of his windup, his eyes would roll back toward the heavens. It was unlike anything fans had ever witnessed. And his screwball, that devastating pitch he threw with such precision, baffled even the most experienced major league hitters. It was a pitch so rare that most batters had never seen anything like it before. But here's what made it special for Lasorda. He didn't just give Fernando the ball and walk away. He learned Spanish so he could talk to him directly. No interpreter, no middleman, just manager manager to player, heart to heart. Drawing on his experiences managing in Caribbean winter leagues, Lasorda had made a concerted effort to learn Spanish. This allowed him to bypass the typical manager-interpreter dynamic and speak directly to Valenzuela, giving him instructions, encouragement, and advice in his native tongue. Think about what that meant to Fernando. He was a 20-year-old kid from a tiny hamlet in Mexico called Huaquila. He was far from home, in a new country, surrounded by people who didn't speak his language. And then his manager, this loud Italian-American from Pennsylvania, sits down with him and speaks to him in Spanish. That gesture told Fernando something powerful. It told him, "You belong here. You matter. I care enough about you to meet you where you are." This gesture fostered a deep and immediate connection, demonstrating a level of personal investment that transcended the normal player-manager relationship. And it wasn't just Lasorda. His catcher, Mike Scioscia, also learned Spanish to communicate better with Fernando. That's the kind of family Lasorda built. Everyone took care of each other. Fernando wasn't just a rookie pitcher. He was one of them. He was part of the Dodger family. What Fernando did that year went beyond the field. The Dodgers had a painful history with the Mexican-American community in Los Angeles. In the 1950s, families were forced out of a neighborhood called Chavez Ravine so Dodger Stadium could be built. Entire families were displaced. Communities were destroyed. That created decades of hurt and anger, a wound that had never really healed. But when Fernando became a star, something changed. He was a hero who looked and sounded like a huge part of the fan base, a part that had felt disconnected for so long. Mexican-American fans who had stayed away from Dodger Stadium for years suddenly came back. They came to see Fernando, to cheer for him, to feel represented by someone who looked like them and spoke their language. Fernando brought people together. He gave them something to believe in again. Valenzuela's meteoric rise, championed by a manager who embraced him without reservation, became a powerful and unexpected force for reconciliation. Lasorda didn't plan it that way, but by believing in Fernando, by celebrating him so openly, by learning his language and treating him like family, Lasorda became the face of reconciliation. He showed that the Dodgers could be a team for everyone. Through it all, Lasorda was Fernando's biggest and proudest cheerleader, beaming in the dugout as his young protege became the biggest story in sports. The 1981 season was magical. The Dodgers made it all the way to the World Series. They faced the New York Yankees. After losing the first 2 games, they came roaring back. They won the next 4 games straight. They became world champions. After the final out, Lasorda hugged Fernando tight. That hug said everything. It said, "I believed in you when no one else did, and you proved me right." Fernando won both the National League Cy Young Award and the Rookie of the Year award that season, the first player ever to win both in the same year. He turned a brilliant baseball story into a story of civic pride, healing, and belonging, demonstrating how a manager's personal belief in one player could fundamentally reshape a team's relationship with its entire community. Now let's talk about a favor that became a Hall of Fame career. The story of Mike Piazza's journey to the Hall of Fame is the ultimate baseball fairy tale, an underdog narrative so improbable it defies belief. It is a story that simply would not exist without Tommy Lasorda. In 1988, the Dodgers were in the middle of a very long draft. In the 62nd round, with the 1,390th pick out of 1,395 total players, the Dodgers selected a first baseman from Miami-Dade Community College. His name was Mike Piazza. He wasn't drafted because of talent. He was drafted because his father, Vince Piazza, was Tommy Lasorda's childhood friend, a successful car dealer from Pennsylvania. It was a personal favor. As a personal favor to an old friend, Lasorda instructed his organization to take a chance on the kid. Lasorda was also the godfather to Mike's younger brother, making the draft pick an act of familial loyalty. The scouts didn't think much of Mike. They said he could hit, but not hard enough to play first base. They concluded his bat was not powerful enough to profile at first base, a position traditionally reserved for a team's premier sluggers. Most teams would have given up on him, but Lasorda saw something different. In a moment of managerial genius, Lasorda completely reframed the evaluation. He gathered his scouts and asked them a hypothetical question. If Mike had that same bat but played catcher, would you sign him? Catchers don't usually hit well. If a catcher can actually hit for average and power, he becomes incredibly valuable. The scouts readily agreed. A catcher with Mike's bat would be worth signing. Lasorda made his decision right there. With a decisive wave of his hand, he pointed at Mike and said, "He's a catcher now. Sign him." With those 5 words, Lasorda completely changed Mike Piazza's life. This was a strategic masterstroke born of intuition. In that moment, Lasorda created a viable path to the major leagues for Piazza, where none had existed, a decision that would change the course of baseball history. This episode stands as a powerful testament to a more holistic, human-centric approach to talent identification, a stark contrast to the purely data-driven evaluations that would come to dominate the sport. It was a decision based on a personal promise and a gut feeling about a player's potential in a different context, completely bypassing conventional wisdom. But Lasorda didn't stop there. Lasorda's commitment to the favor did not end with the draft selection or the positional change. He personally arranged for Mike to attend a special training camp for catchers in the Dominican Republic, providing him with the expert instruction needed to learn the craft from the ground up. This demonstrated that Lasorda's gesture Yeager was not a passive throwaway pick. It was the beginning of an active and dedicated mentorship. He had used his influence to open a door for Piazza, and he was now providing him with the tools to walk through it. Mike Piazza attacked the challenge with incredible work ethic. Despite what some called a silver spoon upbringing, Mike proved he belonged. He dedicated himself to the craft of catching, while showcasing the powerful bat that Lasorda had bet on. His rise through the Dodgers farm system was swift and impressive. After a brief major league debut at the end of 1992, he exploded onto the national scene in 1993. Mike hit 318 with 35 home runs and 112 runs batted in, an offensive onslaught for a catcher that earned him the National League Rookie of the Year award by a unanimous vote. The 1,390th pick became one of the greatest hitting catchers in baseball history. Mike Piazza went on to play 16 years in the major leagues. He hit 427 career home runs. He made 12 All-Star teams. In 2016, he was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Lasorda's incredible long-shot bet had paid off in the most spectacular fashion imaginable, vindicating his faith and his old-school, relationship-based approach to team building. Years later, after Lasorda passed away, Piazza's heartfelt tribute provided a poignant final word on their relationship. He articulated the profound depth of his manager's influence, stating that Lasorda was far more than just a family friend who gave him a chance. He said, "It's hard to find the right words to say about a man who changed my life and my family's life forever." In a room full of doubters, Tommy was the one person that believed in me. He taught me a lot about the game, but most importantly about life. He helped shape me into the man I am today. These words confirm that the secret ingredient to Piazza's Hall of Fame career was not just talent or hard work, but the unwavering paternal belief of a manager who saw something in him that no one else did. That's what made Mike Piazza one of Lasorda's favorites. Not just because he became great, but because Lasorda saw him when no one else did. He believed when no one else would, and Mike never forgot that. Next up is Mike Scioscia. The deep, enduring bond between Tommy Lasorda and his cornerstone catcher, Mike Scioscia, was forged before Scioscia ever put on a professional uniform. In 1976, the Dodgers used their first-round draft pick on Scioscia, a highly touted high school catcher from Pennsylvania. But Scioscia was intent on attending Clemson University on a baseball scholarship. Lasorda, then the Dodgers' third base coach and a relentless recruiter, took matters into his own hands. On July 6, 1976, he personally drove to the Scioscia family home, picked up the young prospect, and during that car ride, delivered his now famous sermon on what it truly meant to be a Dodger. He instilled in Scioscia the organization's ethos of pride, tradition, and loyalty from the very first day. The personal touch worked. That night, Scioscia informed his parents he was foregoing college to sign with Los Angeles. That personal recruitment, that car ride through Pennsylvania, became the foundation of everything that followed. Years later, after Lasorda had taken the managerial reins, he made the pivotal decision to install Scioscia as his starting catcher, moving the respected veteran Steve Yeager into a backup role. The move prompted whispers among sports writers that Lasorda was showing favoritism towards Scioscia because of their shared Italian-American heritage. When confronted with the accusation, Lasorda delivered one of the most legendary and revealing quotes of his career. With a twinkle in his eye, he retorted, "That's a lie. I made him the #1 catcher because I'm Italian." This response was a masterclass in Lasorda's unique communication style. With a single humorous sentence, he simultaneously dismissed the criticism, affirmed his absolute authority, and proudly declared that his decisions were rooted in a deep-seated loyalty to the players he believed in. For Lasorda, his heritage was not just a biographical detail, it was an active part of his leadership identity. The quote was a public performance of his philosophy, a signal to his players that his support was not merely professional but deeply personal. It created a powerful sense of security and belonging for players like Scioscia, who knew their manager's belief in them was unshakable. Under Lasorda's tutelage, Scioscia developed into the quintessential field general. He was universally regarded as one of the toughest players in the game, a defensive stalwart renowned for his ability to block the plate in an era of violent home plate collisions. Former Dodgers executive Al Campanis called him the best plate-blocking catcher he had seen in over 4 decades in baseball. Scioscia was the on-field extension of Lasorda's will, the anchor of the pitching staff and the cerebral leader of the defense for 2 World Series championship teams in 1981 and 1988. He was the embodiment of the grit, intelligence, and determination that Lasorda prized above all else. The relationship gracefully evolved from one of mentor and a protege to a bond of mutual respect between 2 highly successful managers. Scioscia went on to a distinguished 19-year managerial career with the Angels, winning a World Series in 2002 and becoming the winningest manager in that franchise's history. As Scioscia's win total began to approach his mentors on the all-time list, Lasorda expressed nothing but pride. He said, "He is one of the greatest managers and greatest players that God ever put on this earth. I'm so proud of him." When Scioscia told Lasorda he was getting close to passing him, Lasorda's response was simple, "When you do, I'll be proud of you." Scioscia, for his part, always deferred to the man who shaped shaped his career, humbly stating, "What I've done, you really can't compare to Tommy." What Tommy did to the Dodgers organization was really special. Their enduring respect was a testament to a bond forged in a car ride in Pennsylvania decades earlier, and it lasted until Lasorda's final days. Now let's talk about Steve Yeager. Long before Mike Scioscia became his on-field deputy, Tommy Lasorda's trust behind the plate was placed in the hands of another tough, defensive-minded catcher, Steve Yeager. Like so many of Lasorda's core players, the bond between manager and catcher was not formed in the majors, but in the proving grounds of the minor leagues. In 1972, when Yeager was optioned to the Dodgers' AAA affiliate in Albuquerque, his manager was Tom Lasorda. It was there that Lasorda got an up-close look at the traits he valued most: toughness, desire, and an exceptional defensive toolkit. He was immediately impressed by Yeager's powerful throwing arm, famously comparing him to the era's preeminent catcher, Cincinnati's Johnny Bench. He said, "You won't beat that arm of his." A stamp of approval that signaled Yeager's bright future. When Lasorda was finally handed the reins of the major league club in late 1976, there was no question who his starting catcher would be. He valued Yeager's defensive prowess, his ability to manage a game, and his skill in mentoring the team's young pitchers. This trust was on full display during the 1978 World Series. Despite having 4 experienced catchers on the roster, Lasorda's belief in Yeager's defense was paramount. He started him in 5 of the 6 games against the New York Yankees. This decision underscores a central tenet of Lasorda's philosophy: his deep appreciation for the catcher position as the keystone of a team's defensive and strategic identity. He viewed his catchers not just as players, but as co-managers on the field. And in Yeager, he had a tough, intelligent leader he had been cultivating for years. Steve Yeager was a player cast in his manager's own image: gritty, dedicated, and a clutch performer when the stakes were highest. His crowning achievement came in the 1981 World Series. Yeager's clutch hitting, including a game-winning home run in Game 5, propelled the Dodgers to a championship and earned him co-MVP honors alongside teammates Ron Cey and Pedro Guerrero. He was a true World Series hero, a player who embodied the relentless, never-say-die attitude that Lasorda preached. Decades later, in 2024, this spirit was formally recognized in the most fitting way possible. Yeager was selected as the recipient of the 3rd annual Tommy Lasorda Bleed Dodger Blue Award, a posthumous honor created to celebrate members of the Dodger community who exemplify the passion and love for the organization that Lasorda himself possessed. Upon being named the recipient of the award bearing his mentor's name, Yeager's reflection served as a powerful testament to Lasorda's profound and lasting influence. He said, "It's a tremendous honor to receive an award named after Tommy Lasorda, who did so much for the organization and Major League Baseball and impacted the lives of so many young men in his career. Many of those guys had long careers playing and many stayed in coaching, like myself. He touched so many lives and made us all better for it." His words perfectly encapsulated the essence of Lasorda's legacy, not just as a winner, but as a builder of men, a mentor whose impact resonated for decades and shaped the very fabric of what it meant to be a Dodger. Finally, there's Ron Cey, known throughout his career as the Penguin, a nickname that came from his squat build and distinctive waddling walk. Ron Cey was another cornerstone of the legendary, long-standing Dodgers infield that Tommy Lasorda had personally groomed in the minor leagues. This shared history, forged in places like Spokane and Albuquerque, was essential to their relationship. Cey's first impression of Lasorda was of a loud, boisterous man with ear-ringing passion, a manager whose voice seemed to fill an auditorium even when he was speaking to just a few players. This pre-existing familiarity was vital, as it allowed Cey and his fellow infielders to understand the method behind Lasorda's often demanding style. When Lasorda took over from the quiet, low-key Walter Alston, his rah-rah approach was not a shock to the system for his core players. It was simply a continuation of the same passionate leadership his players had known for years, creating an immediate and powerful sense of continuity and buy-in. The most vivid illustration of Lasorda's tough love approach was his unique and brutal practice regimen for Cey at the hot corner. In a drill that would be unthinkable today, Lasorda would walk halfway from home plate to third base and hit blistering scorchers directly at his third baseman. The line drives were hit with such velocity from close range that they regularly bruised Cey's shins and stung his ankles. If Cey happened to miss one, Lasorda would make him run punitive laps around the field. While the method was physically punishing, it was rooted in a clear, strategic purpose. "He used to get so mad at me because of those ground balls I hit him," Lasorda later explained. "I hit him scorchers hoping he would miss them so he would have to run, but only because I wanted to prepare him on catching grounders at the majors. It was preparation through pain, a demanding trial by fire designed to forge one of the league's most reliable and durable third basemen, and it worked." Cey developed into a 6-time All-Star and a key offensive force for the Dodgers. His clutch performance in the 1981 World Series earned him co-MVP honors and cemented his place in franchise lore. Lasorda, in turn, held his third baseman in the highest regard, lauding Cey as perhaps the most most disciplined hitter I've ever seen, and comparing his knowledge of the strike zone to that of Hall of Fame slugger Harmon Killebrew. The relationship was a perfect example of Lasorda's core philosophy. He pushed his players to their limits, but he did so out of a deep-seated belief in their potential, and the results spoke for themselves. The respect went both ways. Say never resented the tough drills. He understood what Lasorda was trying to do. He knew Lasorda pushed him because he believed in him. That's what made their relationship work. Lasorda demanded excellence, but he did it out of love, out of belief, out of a desire to see his players reach their full potential. While many people credit Lasorda with creating the nickname the Penguin, Say has clarified that it actually originated with his college coach, Bobo Brayton. However, Lasorda enthusiastically adopted and popularized the nickname, making it a famous part of the Dodgers' identity. "I look at him and I can't call him Ron," Lasorda once said. "He's got to be the Penguin." Lasorda's embrace of the nickname was part of his genius for marketing his players and creating memorable characters, transforming his team from a collection of athletes to a beloved cast known to fans everywhere. After the 1981 World Series victory, Lasorda hugged his players one by one, among them Ron Say and Steve Yeager. Those hugs weren't just celebration, they were gratitude, they were recognition, they were love. These were the guys Lasorda had gone to war with, the guys he had pushed and believed in and built up from the minor leagues. They weren't just players to him, they were his boys, his family. So who were Tommy Lasorda's 5 favorite players? Fernando Valenzuela, the rookie he trusted on opening day who became a cultural phenomenon. Mike Piazza, the favor that turned into a Hall of Famer. Mike Scioscia, the Italian connection who became a legendary field general. Steve Yeager, the tough catcher who embodied everything Lasorda preached. And Ron Say, the Penguin, who endured brutal drills and became a champion. These 5 players represent what Tommy Lasorda valued most. Not just talent, not just stats, but loyalty, trust, belief, relationships. Lasorda didn't just manage baseball teams, he built families. He created bonds that lasted decades. He saw potential in people when no one else did. He took risks on players others gave up on. He pushed his players to their limits because he knew what they were capable of becoming. The common thread that weaves through the disparate stories of Fernando Valenzuela, Mike Piazza, Mike Scioscia, Steve Yeager, and Ron C. is Lasorda's profound and unwavering belief. It was a belief powerful enough to transform a 20-year-old rookie from a small Mexican village into a cultural icon who could heal a city's wounds. It was a belief audacious enough to see a Hall of Famer in the 1,390th pick of the draft, a player no one else wanted. It was a belief so loyal that he handpicked his field generals, Scioscia and Yeager, and molded them in his own image of toughness and grit. It was a belief so demanding that he would hit scorching ground balls at Ron Say, all to prepare him for the pressures of the major leagues. In every case, Lasorda saw not just the player that was, but the star that could be, and he poured every ounce of his passion into making that vision a reality. These relationships were not transactional, they were transformational. Lasorda invested his time, his energy, his heart into each of these players. He learned their languages, both literally and figuratively. He understood what motivated them, what scared them, what inspired them, and he used that knowledge not to manipulate, but to elevate, to push them toward greatness they didn't know they possessed. Ultimately, Tommy Lasorda's greatest achievement was not his 1,599 regular season wins, his 4 National League pennants, or even his 2 World Series championships in 1981 and 1988. His true masterpiece was the creation of a unique clubhouse culture built on personal, often paternal, bonds. He constructed a family on the diamond. The remarkable stories of his relationships with these 5 key players serve as the premier exhibits of how this philosophy of loyalty and belief translated into a golden era for the Los Angeles Dodgers. When Tommy Lasorda passed away in January 2021, it was just a few short months after the Dodgers had captured their first World Series title since his own championship team in 1988. A poetic and fitting bookend to a life devoted to Dodger Blue. His legacy is not etched in the cold stone of a monument, but is alive and vibrant in the careers he shaped, the leaders he mentored, and the indelible Dodger family he built. He created a culture where loyalty was the highest virtue and belief was the most powerful tool. Fellow Hall of Fame manager Sparky Anderson once observed, "It might look like it's all for show, but the feeling is genuine. He really does love people." This genuine affection was the core of his philosophy. Longtime Dodger Bill Russell put it best. "The important thing about Tommy is that he is not just a guy who makes out the lineup and decides strategy. He makes everyone feel a part of it." That's why Fernando, Mike, Steve, and Ron weren't just players to Tommy Lasorda. They were sons, brothers, family. And maybe that's why the ones he feared, the ones he hugged, and the ones he favored were never just names on a roster. They were the living proof that belief, loyalty, and love can build something greater than any championship. They were Tommy Lasorda's legacy, and that legacy will live forever in the big Dodger in the sky.